I love it.
Patio.
Okay.
Awesome.
Jim, who did these models?
This was the first group. So there were 9 in the first group, and then the second group came through and looked at the spaces between them and how they would cluster together in groups of 3.
Tell me when.
Keep going.
Then the third group
Keep going.
Really?
started considering more of the urban issues.
Oh. Serious toppage you got. Like,
We have like a full-on garage happening here.
That's good. But no, we're going to cut the chunk off for the door.
I know, but I kind of like it.
So are you trying to build one of the models?
No.
Learning another model.
If you want me to give you the kind of the history, so we've had 5 groups. Everyone builds a new iteration on the idea that happened previously. So the first group were given a plot of land, which is the white cardboard you can see underneath them, and a set of materials and the famous blue tarp that's UNHCR, to basically say, you know, you're on your own in the shoes of an affected community member. How would you develop shelter? And from there, we were asking people to be sensitive to a lot of their primary concerns. So, shelter, protection from threats to your health, being culturally sensitive. So, different kinds of populations require different types of, domestic situations, and dealing with issues of just basic dignity, and because sometimes we think of shelter as that it's actually all a structural problem. It's actually not. It's a very human-centered problem. So that group looked at just the units, and we developed 9 of them, and people talked about the different priorities. So some were raised off the ground in case of floods. Others were trying to maximize the plot area, like the one on the end there. Others were looking at sort of interior structures and like, how do we start from the interior and work out?
So needs of families, say, to separate genders or age cohorts.
Right. So, and others looked at more practical issues of how do you deal with cooking and bedding and, children's needs and all of that, tight sort of sizes. The next group that came along took those ideas, they heard the presentations, and then said, what happens when you put 2 of them together? What happens between neighbours? And in fact, how do we think at the community level, not just at the household level? So we went from household to community, and like, during conflict, when whole villages have to move, how do we keep those larger extended families and relationships intact? Because there's value in being able to keep that cohesion there. And what is the value of that? How do we create public spaces? How do you establish a school once you get to a scale? Then the next group came along and looked at it at the urban scale. And we had a river and a big board put out with contours, and they had to manage, hundreds of tents to kind of look at where do you put the latrines, the water source, located next to the river? Do you put it on the hillside or on the flat part, close to the river or away from the river? And then we had a separate set of little red sort of bulldog clips that were turned into tents. Then a whole bunch of yellow ones that we kind of introduced halfway through as they were planning the whole settlement, and said, so here's another group that are also migrating, but there's been sort of historical tensions between the group, different tribal or familial background. How do you manage the politics of that? And so once we got through all the scales from the household unit, communal unit to the urban settlement unit, we then said, okay, let's zoom back down and actually design one-to-one what a actual shelter.
And that's what they're doing now.
And that's what they're doing. So we've got 2 teams going at it. And then by the time the last group came along, we said, pass over your key priorities that you're working towards to the next group. The next group have to modify it and do the next iteration of it.
Okay.
So basically, everyone's ideas evolved as an iteration from the previous group.
Thank you. That's a great explanation.